anyway,
Good-looking boy?
after they lived in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had a very, very big Jewish population. So
Squirrel Hill.
That's
Squirrel Hill.
What street on Squirrel Hill?
It may come to me.
50,
No, that's not the one I remember.
55,
Yeah.
it is, 47, Pecusset Street.
That's it. You know how far back we are.
So they
I
get
don't
very,
know if she was even born yet.
no, I wasn't. So anyway, they're very involved in all the Jewish things. About
So
this,
her mother married the doctor. Did you hear that part?
and both of them were very involved in Zionist, anything at the
This is
time.
before Israel.
Yeah, I think Jeff said it was Palestine yet when they
Yeah.
started. Jeff remembered the years better.
Well, 48 is when Israel came in.
So anyway,
Ben Gurion.
along in Minnesota, there's this lady called Golda Meyerson,
My year.
who later changed her
She
name.
was in the United States?
Yeah, she started in Minnesota.
I
She
didn't know
lived
that.
in Minnesota.
Prime Minister of Israel when it first started.
I don't think she was the first prime minister.
No, Ben Gurion was.
Right. So anyway, she's
Get her.
raised in Minnesota, and she became very involved in the Jewish things. So she used to come into Pittsburgh all the time when she was Golda Meyerson and stayed at her mother's house. So they did fundraising, they knew her well. Then she moves to Israel, and even after she became prime minister, when she used to go into Pittsburgh, and then later they moved to Miami, she would, I don't know if she stayed with them when she was prime minister. In Pittsburgh she did, but I remember down here taking my grandmother over to meet her when she was already prime minister,
Isn't that cool?
premier of Israel.
I remember.
You remember her, Nanny? You remember Golda Meir?
Yeah, Goldie Meir, we called her.
Yeah, that was her.
Goldie Meir went to Harry S. Truman, the president, and
Yeah,
said,
that's a true story.
we're going to form a state, we're going to form a country, but we need some guarantees from you.
No, I don't think it was her, it was
Yes,
Ben
it was
Gurion
Goldie,
after
no,
48.
Goldie, yeah. All right, they both did, whatever.
Okay, I don't know.
And they guaranteed Israel 10 different topics, 10 different things. Monies, guaranteed loans, military, agriculture, different things. And Truman said, okay. And he's the first one who Truman gave Israel a state,
Yeah.
declared
I
it a
think
country.
we went someplace.
And then every president, from Harry S. Truman to Obama, the same 10 things were asked. And nobody gave them the all 10. Some 7, some 6, Reagan gave 4, because this is how Israel survived, until Obama. Obama gave all 10 of
Watson's the one who told us
all
this.
10
Right.
of all of the...
So when people say about how Obama's not
They
good
don't-
for
yeah,
Israel, they don't know
know this.
necessarily.
But he
right?
doesn't have good press with this, Watson
Yeah.
said.
Wasn't
He also, Watson said, came out too strongly against the settlements.
Well,
Wasn't Truman the one who had that great secretary of? Remember, we just saw who they said was like the most bright. Remember, we saw that thing, Rob?
No, I
Was
didn't
it-
think that was
was it
Truman.
Truman?
Was it Truman? I
Yeah, who
thought
had
it was
McNamara.
But that was during
No,
Kennedy.
No, not that.
No, that's
Eisenhower.
later.
we
McNamara's
saw
later.
something about the number 2 guy, like he was brighter than anyone. We heard an
He said that
interview.
you'd read something about
Right, I don't remember what it was.
And
I
Nan
think that's
also had an
Truman's
interesting
state.
thing. Nan's father was one of 9 brothers who came over from Russia. And when some of them settled in Pittsburgh, you remember this,
Uh-huh.
and they had 4 houses
In a
of
row.
the brothers in a row. So she grew up with all her first cousins.
And the backyards were all open. Because
Yeah.
I went up there. You took me there. Do you remember? To Pecusset Street. Your cousin, what was her name?
This is strange, 5547. Well, why could I remember that?
But you remembered your birthday.
but you don't remember what you had for breakfast, right?
Neither do we, that's okay.
It's a good way of thinking.
All of the backyards were opened. What was the cousin's name who lived there that I know?
Who were your uncles who lived next door to you? Do you remember?
Nathan is the father of Selma and Dinah.
Wow.
Ben, Nathan,
Someone died on it?
one.
Forget the
somewhere.
answers, I think.
Who lived next door to you?
Dinah's the one I knew. I
Uncle,
don't know.
was Uncle Herman? Oh,
He
my
was
God.
the bachelor, right?
No,
I
that
don't
was Wally.
remember.
No, there was no
No.
bachelor.
Wally had.
Wally
Wally,
was married. They were all
when I
married.
had a store, Lori, he used to come there, he loved retail, he used to come and
Yeah, he had the store in Pittsburgh.
So
Oh,
she
yeah, what
grew
you-
up. Just think of all your cousins on the same backyards.
All running
grew
between
up.
all of them.
And then I remember going to a Seder. I only remember one Seder.
Zelda Dinah?
At Uncle Herman's house. They would start in one room and it would weave because there were so
I only
many.
had one set of my parents.
You know, they had it every year though.
And didn't one of them become a communist?
Oh yeah.
He became a communist, right?
Not
Really?
one, of,
One of
not
the-
one of those four.
one of the
No,
uncles?
but one of the 7 uncles. And
It was in
there
the
was a
Lincoln
picture.
Brigade.
There was actually a picture as I.
Lincoln Brigade.
The
He
Abraham
moved to-
Lincoln- I'll tell
He
you that
moved
story.
to New York. I forget his name.
Was
Remember what
it
the
Paul or
Lincoln
not?
Brigade
Was it Paul or not?
I'm not quite
That
sure.
was-
I don't-
But I remember going up to Pittsburgh. There was a family portrait of all the brothers, and they all were carrying or had something that was symbolic to them. And he was holding like a communist newspaper in the picture.
The manifesto probably. But
And so
Yeah.
each brother was carrying something.
I
And
didn't
he
see
was,
that picture.
I remember it. And he was carrying,
But
you know.
when we lived on Pocahontas Street, we had Uncle Nathan, Uncle Herman.
Didn't you live on Pocahontas Street?
No, I lived on Ludwig Street.
Tell them the story. Do you remember the story about Uncle Marvy with the big steps on that house? The house where they grew up in Pittsburgh. There was a bunch of
Well, we
steps,
were little when we left. We were 7 and 3.
and Uncle Marvin was always a terrible kid. Was he a bad kid, Uncle
Shocking.
Marvin?
Yeah. Okay.
Your son Marvin, was he a bad kid?
No, he
He
wasn't.
would get into mischief. He
Marvy,
was
you
mischievous.
remember Marvy, don't you? Yeah.
Of course I remember.
Okay.
I'm just
So
trying
he
to
would
think.
open the door all the time and get out. And what happened one time? Like
A neighbor would call that, and there was like maybe 20 steps, concrete. The neighbor would call and say, I hate to tell you, but your son is sitting on my top step. He climbed up 20 steps.
he was 3
I don't
years
know how
old.
he's less
Went
than
across
three,
the
'cause we
street.
were
Just like Jeffrey, huh?
Jeffrey was like that. He would go across the street. And didn't you have to tie him to the steps eventually?
You know how many years you're going back? How many?
Well,
Marvin
Marvy was 2 and Marvy
70.
60 something.
Right.
Oh, my
65
God.
years.
It's a lot. We lived 55, 47. Oh, my God. Pocahontas Street. Now, I forget sometimes. But this I remember.
But let me tell them the story with this guy who was a communist. There was something in Spain at the time. I don't know the year, maybe you know, the Abraham Lincoln Brigade
Never heard
with
of
the B
that.
in Spain. Jeff knew the year, but I forgot. I think in the 20s, prior to World War II. He went over and fought on the side of the communists against I think it was Franco's government, was the nationalist government, and fought against them and was killed. He was killed
The brother
fighting
was
for,
killed?
yeah.
He never married, right? He was a young man.
He was young.
I remember that there was a communist brother.
Yeah.
Huh.
You know who else was very active? My cousin Miriam, or one of them. My cousin.
Is that the one who moved to Israel?
Yeah,
I don't know her.
I forget. She was a cousin of mine.
And this is an interesting thing also with the families. In Russia, there was 9 brothers. There was really one sister. Do you remember why they lost contact with that sister?
She did something that they didn't like. I can't. Did she become pregnant?
No, she married someone not Jewish.
And
So
they
they
never
like
spoke to her
sat
again.
shiva for her, and they never spoke to her again. I
Do
mean,
you ever
these
know
are
what
the
happened to
stories
her?
that I heard.
Could you sit shiva for a person who's living?
Right.
Well, it's kind of like they didn't really sit shiva, but they like disowned her.
Yeah.
And they never found out whatever happened to her?
Wait, those are her cousins, her first cousins?
No,
Or
no,
her
no.
aunt?
That would have been her aunt. The father was one of 9 brothers.
Okay.
And
And
then
there was
there
one
was a
sister.
sister. This is the story they told
They,
me. In
the,
Russia.
the sister never came or something.
She never came up.
Because
She had family in Russia still.
she married Dennis Jacobs and those
Jacobs.
Yeah, it's coming back.
Gregor said we may be
Isn't
related
that
to Eugene.
strange?
Maybe what?
Related to Eugene,
All right.
the guy in
Our
Russia.
tour guide from
Our
Russia.
tour guide.
Oh,
Because
She
we
could
could have
have been.
family